Hello. My name is Reverend Dio in Cleveland, and I'm a pagan minister with Sacred Well Congregation International, and a member of the Sacred Well Board. Today you're watching the Sacred Well YouTube project, an effort to outreach to our fellow pagans who may be unable to meet with others right now for fellowship or learning. Today we're going to be discussing the breath of life, and specifically breathing life into idols. This process actually comes to us from the Greek Magical Papyri, a grimoire written between 100 BCE and 400 CE. For a fantastic analysis, pick up a copy of Stephen Skinner's Techniques of Greco-Egyptian Magic. So when we talk about idols, what we're talking about is essentially any kind of statuary, masks, faces, anything that is meant to represent the gods on your altar. It's actually where the concept comes to us of idol worship in Western religious philosophy. But essentially, it's just anything that is supposed to house a god. Remember that in ancient times, we did not really think of the gods as being transcendent and immanent and all existing everywhere, etc. We thought of them as actually having a place to reside, specifically in their temples and their shrines. So if we wanted to talk with them, if we wanted to entreat them and practice theurgy, we would create for them shrines. And those shrines almost always had images of the gods. Those images give us something to connect to. They give us a face. They give us eyes to look into. But as with anything, they are just dross matter. They are just physical pieces, possibly created by someone other than yourself, possibly just carved from you by wood or shaped or drawn or what have you. There's a process needed in order to awaken them, in order to breathe life into them. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to focus on the idol as a home for gods or a home for spirits or ancestors or what have you. But this process can actually be used for just about anything that needs life breathed into it. It can be used to bring life into a puppet. It can be used to breathe into a working tool, or really anything else that requires that divine spark. Today, we're just going to focus on idols. Remember that breath is a incredibly powerful part of our practice. It's representative of spirit in certain Eastern philosophies. Breath bestows life in classical Hebrew texts. You think of God breathing life into Adam and Eve. And in modern medical practice, breathing is an indication of patient life. We're going to use it to embody or ensoul our idols for use by the gods. Essentially, by breathing into them, we very much like if you were performing CPR, we get their metaphysical lungs working again. We spark that bit of soul back into them. We use it to ensoul them, is a term used in certain circles of tradcraft, and is one that I'll probably use semi-often here. But what it does is it awakens the object. It takes it from being asleep. It takes it from being just physical matter with no life to it, and wakens it up to your magic, your practice, and to be a part of your altar. It also places a small bit of our own spirit within it. What you're essentially trying to do is you're trying to take a physical thing that has had no spirit in it before, and you are trying to give it the capacity to hold spiritual essence or spiritual existence in it. And we do that by giving it a little bit of our own spirit to kind of show it how that's done, if you will, to sort of open up its lungs so that it can then breathe in its own life. And this prepares the idol for inhabitants by another spirit, god, what have you, whatever you're using it for. Specifically, if you're using it for the practice of theurgy, it prepares it to be a representation of the god on your altar, of that god or goddess on your altar. And if you're familiar with the process of invocation or with any kind of theurgic acts of bringing the deities into your circle and into your area, then you can use that breath that you draw in during that process to invoke the spirits directly into that idol. It's a very simple process, but it's incredibly, incredibly sacred. And it absolutely will create within the idols on your altar, or as I've said before, with working tools or anything else, it'll create within them that spark of life that allows you to connect with them, to commune with them, to talk with them. One of the reasons that I like statuary or sometimes masks, images of faces, etc. for this process, is that when you are bringing the divine into your circle, into your space, and putting it on your altar, having actual eyes there to look back at you is incredibly, incredibly important. It's the difference between a non-anthropomorphized thing and an almost human-like thing, an anthropomorphized thing. What you're talking about is you can breathe life into a candle by all means. You can ensoul the flame itself. But when you're sitting there talking with your god, with your goddess, with your patrons, having them look back to you and having them with the ability to speak with you is going to make that connection all the more strong and all the more important. We use this heavily in my practice, and I'm going to teach it to you now. It's very simple, very easy. You find yourself an idol of any sort, a statue, something with eyes, something that you're going to dedicate to your gods. The way you do that is, of course, personal to your own practice. I know people who will commission the carving of beautiful statues. I know people who will purchase cold cast bronze statuary. I know people who have had amazing luck carving images themselves or sculpting them out of clay or even Sculpey, or going to businesses that allow you to paint your own masks and faces and such, and then they'll fire them for you. All of these are excellent options, and I encourage you to do some exploration as you're looking for a proper idol for your gods to use in this process. But even something as simple as a drawing or something as simple as a printout of an image of a statue will work as you're practicing this process and as you are attempting to build your devotional altars in your homes. For today, I'm going to go ahead and use this lovely image of the Green Man, which I got many years ago, and I don't know that I could tell you who the manufacturer of this is. But it spent a lot of time on my altar. It's been anointed with a lot of different oils and incenses, and has become incredibly important hanging above my altar space. We're going to use him in particular to show my point of wanting eyes as well as a mouth. Eyes are important so it can look back to you, remember, the window of the soul, as well as a mouth is important so that you have somewhere to breathe that life into, to breathe that spark of soul into. I'm going to guide you through a little bit of meditation. If you're at a place where you can safely do so, please feel free to join me. If not, please feel free to watch this at another time and try it then. First thing we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes and we're going to practice some active visualization, making sure that we can look from the interior of our eyelids at the space around us, at our small altar space, if that's what you're in front of. And we're going to practice breathing in intentionally. Breath is incredibly important, and we take it for granted a lot. If you ask any performer, singer, anyone who uses their breath as a part of their instrument and their art, on our normal day-to-day, we breathe so shallowly that our lungs barely open up. What we're going to do here is we're going to intentionally breathe. We are going to fill up what I've always called a singer's lung, if you will, where what you are attempting to do is you're attempting to open your lung from the bottom to the top. You want to fill the bottom of that lung like you're filling a balloon and then letting it expand up to the top there. And the way we're going to do this is, first off, we're not going to force or belabor our actual breath. If you're trying to do a, then you're still only working with the top of your lungs. What we want to do is we want to take relaxed breaths, but we want to take good, deep, relaxed breaths, and we're aiming for the bottom of our lungs. You're going to know that that's the case because it's not your chest that's going to expand, it's your belly that's going to expand. If you breathe into your stomach, you're going to get a much bigger, stronger breath, and you're going to fill it with that intention. This is also a common part of many meditations, and is the number one way you can start getting good oxygen to your brain, which calms everything down around you, something very important during times of stress. So we're going to close our eyes. I'll walk you through the breathing first, and then we'll go on to the visualization, and then we'll breathe life into our idol. Start with those big breaths. Remember, we're taking calm, deep, big breaths into our stomach and then letting it expand our body. So, big breath. You should notice, if you're doing this correctly, that your breaths are much longer than they usually are. If you usually only breathe for a couple of seconds, you should notice that this doubles or even triples the time it takes you to breathe. And you're filling out that lung. You might almost feel just a tiny bit high that way if you're not used to getting a lot of oxygen up to your brain, if you're a particularly shallow breather. We're going to do a few of those just to get our lungs kind of working and expanding again. So, big breath 1. We're going to hold it until it hurts just a little bit. And then we're going to breathe it all the way out till we're empty. Once we're empty, let yourself stay without breath for a moment, just for as long as you're able to. And feel yourself as that stone, as that wood, as that thing that does not yet have life that you're currently working with. Then after a moment, we're going to breathe life back into our own body. Feel it expand to every cell and hold it within us, feeling ourselves glow just a little bit from now having that spark of life, and back out. As we do so, and as your eyes are closed, keep an image of the area around you. Whatever method you use to call the divine, to call your deities, go ahead and do so. You're going to want to use that method as you're doing the breathing in. Say your prayers, your hymns, your invocations, your evocations, what have you. And get them in the circle with you, if you have that option. If not, if you are unpracticed in that, what you're just trying to do is make an idol to go on your altars so that when the gods come to you, they have a home, they have a place to start talking to you through, that's fine as well, in which case you're going to skip this part. But if invocation and theurgy is something that you are familiar with, then absolutely, let's go ahead and do that with our active visualization. So, go ahead and do so in whatever manner you wish. Prayers, invocations. I find that descriptions of the gods are incredibly useful. They put you on the same vibration level, so that way the gods can meet you there. Keep doing your large active breaths. And then We're going to go ahead and use that active visualization to see the faces in front of us of our gods, or if you are the second kind of person that I just described, what we're going to do is we're going to see the floating energy around us. As we breathe in, we're going to breathe either the floating energy, those motes of life, into our body through every cell and into our lungs. You're going to want them to expand very, very deeply so that they can hold as much energy, as much light as possible. Or if you're practicing theurgy and you've invoked a god in front of you, a spirit in front of you, an ancestor, you're going to breathe them into your body. You're going to put them in your lungs. You're going to give them a home for just a moment so that you can connect with them before you then breathe them out into the statuary. So, take a moment, visualize very strongly the motes of light around you, the face of the spirit in front of you. And then we're going to take that nice, large, huge breath to draw all of that in every soul of in every pore of your body. When it's there, let it sit there. See if you hear anything. If you get any impressions. If that spirit wishes to talk with you. And then you're going to take your idol, find where its mouth is, and just like you were performing CPR, you're going to give it a large breath into its mouth and breathe that energy directly into it. I like to wait a moment before I breathe back in and just let it have my breath, that breath that gives me life. Let the idol itself have that for a moment as my own lungs stay closed. Bring yourself up. You breathe life back into yourself. And open your eyes and really look into the eyes of your idol. Really, really stare into them for a moment and see that little spark in them. You'll know if you've done this correctly two ways. The first is that you will see that little mischievous spark in the eye of your idol. This may be pre-existing. This may have been drawn in the painting, or like mine has, I don't know if you can tell, there you go, these lovely little white lights at the top of it, these little reflections, if you will, but those gain a little bit more life afterwards. The other way is that you can almost tell, if you've done this enough, if you've started awakening your senses, that it breathes back. When you've breathed in, you can feel it, hear it, accepting that into its metaphysical lungs and breathing it back out for a moment. Then you've had this lovely exchange with your idol, which is now able to house whatever spirit you're working with, the deity that you're working with, your patron god, what have you. Afterwards, remember, what you currently have now is a living, breathing entity, which means that you have to take care of it, which means feeding it offerings like you do anyway to your gods, your spirits, your patrons, which means keeping it clean, which means anointing it with some oil depending on your traditions, and which means when you see it, greeting it, acknowledging it. This is now a being in your home, in your space, on your altar. This has been our lesson in ensouling idols. As I've said before, you can actually do this to working tools, which gives them a space for a little bit of your spirit. You can do this with puppets. You can do this with all sorts of things. I tend to teach it primarily just for working with idols because I find that that's the thing that is asked of me most. How do I start working with deities and patrons and spirits and the like? And this is a great way to give them a vessel to sit within and to speak with you. As we wrap up, I want to thank you for joining me. If you'd like to learn more about Sacred Well Congregation, visit us at sacredwell.org, where we're honored to serve members of our military with distinctive faith groups all over the world, and our community with clergy at large and pagan and Wiccan covens. If you'd like to get in touch with myself, you can find me at paganminister.com. I hope you've enjoyed and learned something. Blessed be and have a great day.